Do you ever struggle to get perfect painting outlines for your artwork? Welcome to Summit Brushstrokes. Today I'm going to be showing you how you can take any reference photo and transfer that onto watercolor paper and use it as an outline for your paintings. This is the image I've chosen to use to demonstrate this technique. I'm actually going to carry on in future lessons and do this blue jay in watercolor pencil. So we're going to take a week to do the background and we'll work on the blue jay. So it'll be a few lessons at least, but today I just want to show you how I go ahead and transfer the image. Now, I found this image online on a site that's got royalty-free images that you can use as an artist, or you can use it for commercial purposes, which is perfect for what we want to do today. Some artists don't realize that you cannot just go to Google Images and find a nice image or photo and print it and use it as your reference, but a lot of those images are actually copyright, and they belong to the artist or the photographer who took them. Whereas if you use an image from a site that's specifically designated for commercial use or for artistic use, then you can go ahead and use it. Now, the very best option is to take your own photo references, but sometimes we don't always have access to everything that we want to draw or paint, right? And so that's where having some websites with images that are available for us as artists is really, really helpful. So I'll include links below, first for the image that we're going to be using today, so that you can go ahead and follow me and trace it onto watercolor paper if you want to do this whole project in watercolor pencil with me. But I'll also include some links to other websites where you can get images to use in your own artwork. Now, when I print my image, I actually convert it into black and white, as well as just kind of lighten things up so that it's not as dark when it prints. That way I'm able to see the detail a little bit better. And it'll also reduce how much computer ink it requires. So I do like to get it nice and light as well as gray. Then I can just refer to my laptop or to my iPad to see the photo when it's in full color. That way I also don't need to be printing color images. And as far as what I print on, this is just a very cheap computer paper. It's very thin and there's nothing special about it. Super cheap. And that's another reason you also would want to lighten your image before you print it, so that, you know, if you're using just a cheaper paper, it tends to be more porous and it absorbs more ink and it gets very dark. So just a couple tips on your printing. And if you'd ever like to see how I do that whole process of converting the image and printing it or getting it ready to print, that's something that I could show you how I go about doing that. I just use Microsoft Word or PowerPoint. Super easy, but if you've never done it before and you'd like a tutorial on that, let me know. So once I have my image here, what I need to do is get it ready to transfer it. There's a couple ways you can do that. Number one is you could just turn it around and grab a pencil. An HB would be okay, but I prefer a 6B pencil just because it's a little bit darker, and you can just go ahead and scribble over the back of the whole image. Or you can use transfer paper. I've made my own transfer paper. You can just take a piece of regular tracing paper or a very thin paper like an onion skin paper and do the same thing, scribble over the whole back, either again with your 6B pencil. Again, you can try your HB and see how that works, or you can even use a graphite stick like this, and that will save you some time. So just scribble over the whole thing. Again, you could do it directly onto the back of your image, or in this case, if you do it on a piece of transfer paper or light tracing paper and scribble on it, then you'll be able to reuse this and you've kind of created your own piece of transfer paper. So either way works. So what I'm going to be doing is just using this to save on time. So I'm going to lay down my piece of watercolor paper, and this is Archer's 140-pound cold press. Then I'm going to take my transfer paper and lay the dirty side downwards onto my watercolor paper. And I am with Arches, there tends to be one side that's a little bit smoother than the other. So that's what I'm using, is the smoother side. I'm gonna lay this down on top, and then finally my image will be right side up. So the dirty side is downwards with the transfer paper, or if you have just scribbled on the back of this, it's automatically gonna be down, and you're putting your image face up. And just lay it down like so. And then I'm gonna go ahead and tape this sandwich together. You can just try your best to hold it down, but the bad news is when you have a lot of details to transfer and the thing shifts a little bit, you have to start all over again. So I really recommend using some tape, just some cheap painter's tape, and kind of get that thing sitting nice and secure for yourself. So one on each corner, or even 3 of the corners is probably enough, but let's just do all 4. Then to trace, I'm just going to go over it with a pencil. Now this is just a colored pencil. It doesn't matter what color you use because the color is only going to stay on this image. It's not going to get onto your watercolor paper, but you'll be able to see where you're going better with a bright color versus just say using a grayish colored pencil. So I'm going to go around the outside of this bird. And then I will go ahead and get some details as well, but I'm not going to, be super detailed. And if you ever are doing this and you're confused about where a line is, if it's dark and blurry, you can always grab your photo reference that's in full color and take a quick peek, because usually the full color one will help you see exactly what your details are. Sometimes, I don't know, in the grayscale it almost obscures them a little bit. And if you watch what I'm doing, you can see very clearly I'm not getting every single little detail. I'm going to get some of these here. I generally look for the large shapes and get them in first, and then like all these little tiny little lines, I probably won't get them all on there. I'll just get the main ones. One thing to pay attention to is that you keep your whites. So as you can see, there's a few areas that have little white shapes, and you really want to pay attention to those, because if you lose them, you can always like draw them back in with a lighter colored pencil at the end. But I prefer leaving my whites so that, you know, I don't have to use a white pencil or white paint or whatever, but it is an option. You can always use gouache or a white pencil to fix things if you lose them. And that happens, so don't feel bad if you end up losing them later on. Since most of this process is straightforward, I'm going to speed the video up and then I'll show you my final image. And when you run into a section on here where you can't always tell, like, okay, what would go back here, you can just decide to like cut off the top of that just as is, or you can draw another fence post. I might just actually make this a little bit bigger, or I should say a little bit wider or deeper on this last one. But again, this is just taking artistic license. I've kind of messed up a little bit there, but that way I'll have a slightly bigger space in the back. And when you think you've got all the details, I would recommend just lifting one or two of the corners of your tape off and peeking at it to make sure the transfer worked. Looks like it did. And also just check that you haven't missed anything. I can see one area on my bird foot that could probably be a little bit repaired, but I can probably do that in pencil. You can decide on that based on how confident you feel about your drawing. I think I'm happy. So I'm just going to go ahead and fix those little details that I kind of missed. If you look at that closely, you can see I do have some detail, but I don't have every single feather. I don't have every single little tiny line. I've just kind of got the overall direction of the lines here. And I'm finding that's enough for what I want, but if you want to get more detailed, you can. But I'll probably just try and eyeball and draw some of those details in as I go. Then if you want, you can go over some of these lines and lighten them a bit with a kneadable eraser. It's optional, but I personally prefer to get my pencil lines as light as I can before I work. I still want you guys to be able to see them okay on the camera, but if I leave these lines too dark, they will become, well, just in general, pencil, once you wet it, it will become permanent. It's just something to know about pencil and graphite. So just keep that in mind with how much of your transfer you leave visible. If you find it was really dark, you'll want to maybe lighten it a bit. And actually, if it's too light, you can easily just trace it with a pencil at this stage so that you can see it. And I think I'm happy with it. Next time, we'll start painting the background for this blue jay. But in the meantime, I hope this tutorial has brought a little taste of God's beauty and peace into your everyday life, and that it's inspired you to continue enjoying your own creative journey. See you again soon. Bye.